Before the start of a new NBA season, one of the funnest things to do as fans is predict who we think are going to win the major awards of the upcoming season. And while that's very fun and interesting to do, it's pretty straightforward when it comes to awards like the MVP. You know who those are going to be, you just have to pick who you think is going to be the best player. You know your typical DPOY candidates, you know your typical Sixth Man of the Year and Rookie of the Year candidates. But the most interesting award to predict who are going to be at the top of the award is the most improved player, because it's just that. We really don't know who the most improved player candidates are. We just have to guess based off of things like their potential and our instincts on who's going to have a breakout season. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 most improved player candidates that I think have a chance of breaking out in this upcoming NBA season. Before we get started though, make sure you guys follow me on Instagram at Daniel_Delari. If you're going to follow a channel, doing that would be a great idea since I post things like NBA polls on my Instagram and my story, and I'll give updates on the channel. So with that being said, now let's get started with the video. The first candidate that I see as a potential frontrunner for the most improved player award is OG Anunoby of the Raptors. You guys know if you watch the channel that I'm a big Toronto Raptors fan, and I can definitely see OG breaking out this season. Last year in the playoffs, especially against the Celtics in the second round, OG's defense was incredible, and he looked like one of, if not the best defensive player in the entire league. And I think he'll be in both the most improved player and the defensive player of the year race. In that series against the Celtics, he did a fantastic job of switching on to bigger centers inside the paint, even out-rebounding them despite being a little bit shorter, defending the pick and roll, and overall being a clamp god and a guy that can defend anyone on the floor and is very versatile. So that's why I see him as a DPOY candidate, and he could definitely break out on the defensive end of the floor as well as on the offensive end of the floor. I can see, as his shot is getting better each year, him having a breakout year, shooting the 3-ball, and posting up inside since he has a bit of a bigger role on the team now. So because of this and how OG can improve on both ends of the floor this year tremendously, that's why I see him as the most improved player candidate. The next player that I see as a potential most improved player candidate in this upcoming season is Brandon Clarke of the Grizzlies. You guys know that I'm very high on Brandon Clarke, and I think by the end of this year, he could make a case for being a top 50 player in the league. And this is because last year he didn't get that big of a role with the Grizzlies, but will probably get a little bit of a bigger one this year since he's proved that he's a very good and overall complete offensive player. He's great in the pick and roll, he's a great roller to the basket, and also has a great floater and a good three-point shot, so he can space the floor for guys like Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. as well if he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And all this being said, he's still a great defender and a guy that you can rely on the defensive end of the floor to help your team. So because of all these reasons, Brandon Clarke is a guy that I see potentially breaking out this year and maybe being a candidate for the most improved player. The next player I potentially see as a most improved player candidate this year is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Thunder, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of people have Shai as a most improved player candidate this year because of the fact that now he's the #1 guy in OKC, and last year he proved that he's a very good overall offensive player, but this year he's giving a huge opportunity because now he doesn't have either Chris Paul, Danilo Gallinari, or Dennis Schroeder on the team, so he's going to be getting all the touches and definitely the focal point of their offense. I can see him potentially averaging close to 25 points this year because his offensive game is that good and complete. He can shoot the ball very well and be a good playmaker if he has the ball in his hands, and he's given a huge opportunity, as I mentioned, because he's the main guy. The next player I see potentially breaking out this season is Mitchell Robinson of the Knicks. And this one's a little bit more of a sleeper pick, as not a lot of people consider this guy as a most improved player candidate this year. But the reasons behind this for me is because, first of all, he's proven that he's been a very good defender and rim protector, and I can see that being a little bit more recognized this year as he's the main defender on the New York Knicks, keeping their defense intact. I can see him averaging potentially the most, if not close to the most, blocks in the league, and being a very good inside defender and grabbing a lot of rebounds, adding to his stats. And then on the offensive end of the floor, I can see this year the Knicks using him a lot more in their offense and things like pick and rolls and also posting him up. his points aren't just going to come from cleaning up the glass. He's going to get a lot more touches this year, in my opinion, and average closer to 13 to 15 points per game. That's a lot for Mitchell Robinson, but that's the reason that I see him as a main potential most improved player candidate. The next player I see being a candidate for the most improved player award this year is another Knicks player in RJ Barrett. If you guys watched the Eastern Conference standings predictions video, you know that I am very high on RJ Barrett, and I think that this year he's going to break out and average close to 20 points per game. And that's really not because he's going to get more of an opportunity. I think I see him getting the same opportunity with the ball in his hands as he did last year, but it's really just because last year I think he had a disappointing season and can do a lot better than 14 points per game on bad efficiency. I see him being a lot more efficient. His three-point shot will improve tremendously in my opinion, and overall, he will improve greatly on the offensive end of the floor, which is why I see him as a most improved player candidate. And if you guys also watched that Eastern Conference video, as I'm referring back to it again, but I had the Knicks at 11th place in the conference. A lot of people have them in last, but one of the big reasons I had them there is what I'm talking about now. How I think RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson could potentially be big most improved player candidates. The sixth player I can see potentially breaking out this season is Michael Porter Jr. of the Nuggets. When Michael Porter Jr. was entering the league, a lot of teams and analysts were very high on him, but he fell all the way to the 14th pick in the draft because he was injured and was going to miss the whole first season of his career. So that happened, and then last year, throughout the entire season, he consistently averaged only around 7 to 8 points per game, which was very underperforming for him. But in the seeding games in the bubble, we saw just how good Michael Porter Jr. can be. He was dropping consistently 30 a night in those seeding games, which didn't carry through to the playoffs, but that version of MPJ is something that I see being consistent throughout this upcoming season. When he's at his best, his scoring patches his 20 points per game caliber, and that's what I think is going to happen in this upcoming season. We're going to see him shooting a lot more threes, a lot more pull-up threes in transition, which is a deadly move of his, and posting up a lot more, and overall scoring a lot more and more efficiently for this Nuggets team. The next player I see as a most improved player candidate for this upcoming season is Christian Wood. This is a guy that a lot of people think will win most improved player, and it's obvious why. In the middle of the season last year, after the All-Star break, he broke out and was absolutely carrying the Pistons team. And now that he's on the Rockets, he's going to have an opportunity to shoot a lot more threes, play a lot better defense, and really be the full version that we saw of him post-All-Star break last year. So if he performs like that throughout the entire season this year, he's going to be a top most improved player candidate, no doubt. The next player I see being a strong candidate for the Most Improved Player award is Jalen Brunson of the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Jalen Brunson is definitely a sleeper pick for this award, as not a lot of people are talking about him as a strong candidate for the Most Improved Player. But the reason I have him here is I watched him all the way back in his Villanova days, and I know that college and the NBA is a completely different story, but in my opinion, he still hasn't reached his full potential and still has a lot of room for improvement, and I think this could be the year that he potentially breaks out and sees drastic improvements in things like his shooting, his three-point shooting efficiency, his playmaking, and his passing ability, as I can see him being the guy that runs the offense for the Mavericks when Luka Doncic is out of the game. So I can see a big improvement on the offensive end of the floor, and I think his perimeter defense can still get better as he develops. So these are reasons why Jalen Brunson is one of my sleeper picks for the Most Improved Player award this year. The next player that I see being a candidate for this award is DeJounte Murray of the Spurs. DeJounte is a guy that hasn't reached his full potential yet, and on the defensive end of the floor, keeps improving his elite perimeter defense year after year, and has proven that he's one of the best in the league at that, and in the future could win a Defensive Player of the Year award. And this year, I see him taking another big step in his defense, especially on the perimeter, but also on the offensive end of the floor. Like I mentioned, he still hasn't reached his full potential, and in my opinion, he could be a lethal scorer and a guy that runs the offense of the Spurs team and has a bigger opportunity now to do that with their stars aging and their depth lacking. He's going to have a big opportunity this year to run this team's offense, up his playmaking ability, and really score a lot more than he usually has. So I can see a big improvement for him on the offensive end of the floor. His defense will continue to get better, and that's a big reason why I see him as a Most Improved Player candidate this year. And lastly, the final most improved player candidate that I have for this upcoming season is Trey Burke of the Dallas Mavericks. This is by far the biggest sleeper pick of the video. No one has even mentioned Trey Burke's name when it comes to most improved player talks, but the reason I see him potentially having a most improved player type of season is over the last few years, he's been jumping from team to team and hasn't really found a home and gotten settled in to a place where he can consistently perform at a high level. Over the last few games he's played in the league and in the playoffs with the Dallas Mavericks, he's consistently shot around 40% from 3. If he can do that over a consistent full 72 game season and come off the Dallas Mavericks bench, really settle in for them, be a good role player for them, handle the ball a little bit, and score in many different ways, including his three-point shot, he could potentially consistently average around 15 points per game for them. So this potential impact that he could have on the offensive end of the floor for a playoff contending team is why I see Trey Burke as a player that could potentially win the most improved player award. Before I end the video, I'm going to briefly discuss some honorable mentions and some guys that people have as most improved player candidates that I just left off the list. The first is Coby White. He's kind of like Christian Wood in the fact that he broke out last year post All-Star break, but I don't see his production that he was putting up then being sustainable. So I see him improving a little bit from overall last year, but not as much because they still have guys like Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen coming back from injury, so he won't be getting that many touches. Another is Lonzo Ball. Some people see Lonzo improving. I see him improving a little bit, but I think the best Lonzo is going to be is a guy that puts up at best 15 points per game and be just a really good playmaker and defender. I don't see him turning into anything special like people expected him to be over his career. And the other is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is a self-explanatory most improved player candidate because he broke out last year in the NBA bubble in the playoffs, but I don't see that being sustainable for a full 72 game season. I think he could have another dominant playoff run, but in the regular season I don't see him consistently scoring at the level and dominating games that he was doing in the playoffs last season. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 most improved player candidates for this upcoming season, along with some honorable mentions. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this is the type of award prediction that we're all going to have completely different opinions on. So feel free to leave any most improved player candidates that you think have a chance of winning it in the comments below. As always, thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I'll see you guys next video.